payment of $5,882.50 for the premium for the workman's comp insurance for the Elrama Volunteer Fire Department.
So moved.
That's per quarter,
Per quarter, right.
$5,082.50 per quarter.
I'll second that.
You said we might get fined for that then?
You might
It's
possible.
Okay, so this is my question, legal question. Should this say to ratify the payment? Cause we've already made this payment.
If you want to change the word to approve to ratify, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so I'm changing that motion to ratify the payment that's been made for $5,882.50 for the premium for the workman's compensation insurance for the Elrama Fire Department. Okay, so we had was that Steve and you?
Steve and me.
Oh, Steve and you. Okay, so Parrish and Evans Bourne. Motion by Parrish, second by Evans Bourne. Any other comment on? Any comment on this item?
My only concern was a comment that the policy was canceled 3 years ago. We just learned about it quite by accident last week. And, the township quickly went to work, so to speak, to get that policy approved. The status right now is at the state level where the appropriate state agencies reviewing the whole aspect of the request for the compensation coverage. As I understand it, Andy Kuzma, the recently elected state rep, is helping the township to try to expedite at the state level the approval of the payment and also the policy, so that we can get it as quickly in place as possible. But it seems as though, as important as this policy is, it's just unbelievable to me, and I know the rest of the board members, the jeopardy that those firemen in Elrama were placed in, not only the firemen, but their families, because of the dereliction, at least, of duty to this prior board. And if there's any way, and I'm gonna discuss this with a little more depth when we get to the bill pays, that they can be held accountable, this board needs to take whatever actions we have to take to hold them accountable.
So, do you wanna have any discussion on what we went through for this?
Sure.
So, for the audience members that aren't from the fire department, that are not aware of, what went on here. On Thursday, well, since we did the fire contracts, and I didn't know anything about fire contracts before, January, when the Phillyville Fire Department came to me and said that they wanted their fire contract. So I went through the files and the thing, I found out old contracts for both departments. And then, on the Elrama one, it said that we pay for their workman's comp, which makes sense. Apparently the borough pays for Finleyville's. You can't get your own workman's comp easily without having payroll employees. So it's through the township. So I couldn't find any, insurance documents, and there's only two companies that do it. One's the state and one's a private company. So I didn't have any passwords for the state's website. As everyone knows, I didn't have any passwords. state and federal government, websites don't send you passwords by email, they mail them to you. So if you ever, they can't get onto your IRS thing or your social security, they mail them to you. So it took a minute, they finally mailed me the, information to sign on to the state's website. Then on Thursday, signed on and could not see a policy, so I reached out to Michael Bailey from Bailey Agency, who is our broker for all of our other insurance policies, and asked him to check. And this was about 4:30 on Thursday. And he said that our policy was canceled back in 2020. He said it's not gonna be easy because it's not a lapse, you're not renewing. This is not a lapse. There is no policy. A policy has to be written. He said the other insurance company, you're gonna have to go through the state because the state's a guarantee. The other insurance policy might even be less money, but they're never taking it. And if you don't do it quick, you're gonna lose all of your insurances. If the other insurance companies would find out that you would send a fireman into a burning building without insurance, every insurance in the township would be canceled, and then we would be closed down. So we had an emergency executive session at, 5 o'clock? After 4:30 of finding this, we all got together at 5 o'clock. Mr. Michael reached out to Stephanie Pettit in Canton the very next morning, who, well, you can say from all the things that she did. I mean, even though she works at another township, she felt this was very serious and very concerning. I think she even left Canton and came here,
Probably did.
worked with our treasurer and Michael Bailey Insurance and to get the policy to the underwriters.
Also, Lenny Bailey sent us over a roster, am I right, Lenny?
Yeah, she reached out, I think someone reached out to one of the staff, probably the treasurer or something that Stephanie was working with. For a roster of all the men to write the policy, cause everybody is, men and women, everybody's listed on the policy when they're covered. And then, found an expedited way to, an emergency way to go through, but even then, they wouldn't, start the underwriting process till after receiving a check. It's just been, I think like I said, I stayed here all Thursday night after finding out, trying to get as much information. I couldn't believe that I couldn't find a policy. I went through last year's stuff, I went through the year before stuff, I reached out to everyone I could figure out, and what happened was I ended up in the C-can, and Nicole Dooley did a renewal policy in December of 2019, and that was the last policy that I could find. I couldn't believe that would be the last policy, but that was the last policy going into 2020. And that was the last time I saw a roster list and a insurance policy for the firemen. I thought, maybe I'm just missing it. Most of the file cabinet doors were either disheveled or empty. So I stayed here all Thursday night hoping that I would be wrong on it. But we all reacted to it as quickly as possible.
Well, like you said, Lenny Bailey's been in touch, we've been talking pretty much every day, but I think the real help was Andrew Kuzma.
We've had conference calls with Andrew Kuzma, who has spent most of today and yesterday talking to Swift, which is a huge help. His office first called, and he felt it would even be better if he called personally. He called, I believe, Senator Bartolotta as well. It just couldn't believe, I was hoping it would be quicker, but it had to go through the underwriters, and they had to look at our risk factors. They had to look at, it's not easy if you lapse your insurance or don't have a policy for so long that they have to.
And this is no fault of the fire department. They're basically the victims of this travesty, from our perspective. And I gotta give them a lot of credit because, as Mr. Beatty stated before, Mr. Geiser stated before, they've done 700 calls in these past few years. And basically, they were defenseless. Am I right? Because if something goes wrong, and someone get hurt, there's no coverage. And those people would have been subjected to more headaches, and ultimately the fire department, and so would the township.
There was a newsletter put out, with two supervisors who were running for election, put the picture of themselves, putting up the veterans banners with the Elrama Fire Department. And they used it for a newsletter that the taxpayers paid for in Union Township. It was way over $5,000 in total. And the picture shows those men and women hanging the banners on the poles. And the whole time, they didn't have insurance. They didn't have insurance. They used it as a newsletter with two candidates on it. They were running for office in Union Township, who were sitting on this board approving the payment for that newsletter. And not only did that, I was in the meeting where they told them they would give them a $2,500 donation, which I don't believe they ever even gave them.
I was here.
And
I was
then
here too.
they weren't insured, and you look at the picture and you go, they weren't insured. They're up on a ladder truck, and they're using it for pictures for a that-a-boy for themselves. It's disgusting. And I'm sorry it happened. I didn't sign their 2022 contract for the year I served because it was signed before I got on the board. I didn't even know there were contracts until the Finleyville Fire Department came to me saying they wanted their contract. And when I read their contract and it said we had, it's a shame they even have a contract. They're our fire department. It's a shame they work by contract. And I understand Finleyville, we should contract with them because they're not in our municipality. There has to be a clear understanding between the two parties. But Elrama's our fire department. They're not gonna come by contract or, so I would like to relook at whether or not we need a
It's
contract.
called a mutual aid agreement, you don't need a contract for any fire
I
department.
mean,
We don't do it anywhere else.
Yeah,
I don't know,
I go
in
to Jefferson Hills for-
2017, it seemed to be
I
the
go to Jefferson
boards
Hills for
want
calls
to
all
do
day
this.
long, mutual aid agreement, they call us, we go. I go to New Eagle, it's a mutual aid agreement, there's no
Quite
contract.
frankly, your contract was a piece of paper anyway, and it didn't follow
now
it.
it's void,
They've
you
been
can
in
throw it in
void
the
of their,
garbage.
they've been in void of their contract since 2020 when they lapsed your insurance. Right? So, been a long sleeping, but between the constant phone calls, and the conference calls and if they don't open up that check tomorrow morning, I believe Mr. Parrish has made a commitment to do it first thing in the morning, and
We'll
Right.
take it.
they don't wire money, but even if they did, we still have a credit card.
They would,
But you can't wire money. But yeah, he said he would
I
drive it
will, I'll take
first thing
it.
in the morning if that policy. Mr. Kuzma did get them to write, the underwriters to write the policy without the check in hand. They weren't gonna even start the underwriting without the check in hand.
And the checks, and by the way, the check and the thing was submitted.
It was actually delivered to them on the 1st. We have a tracking thing. It was delivered to them on the 1st at 7 a.m.
Okay.
Why they haven't opened the envelope or whatever, I don't know. But if not, we're gonna hand deliver it tomorrow
Right,
and give it to somebody.
Yep.
So,
Did we vote on this yet? I don't think we did, did we?
and I'm gonna take a vote.
We have a first and a second.
Steve Parrish and Linda.
yep. And roll call.
Dupree,